Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the 2022 Craft Beer Professional Spring Virtual Conference. We're about to dive into a very fun session about the types of taproom customers, what matters most to them, and who you're most likely to serve in your taproom. We'll begin shortly, but in the meantime, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat with your name, your role, your brewery, and what you care most about when you go to visit a brewery. As we wait for a couple of people to log on, being the first session of the day, I want to take a moment to pause and thank everyone who made this possible. So first and foremost, Craft Beer Professionals and Andrew for allowing us and selecting us to present, and as well as the sponsors, that being Arrive POS, River Drive Cooperage, and White Labs for their support, making this conference accessible to all of us. Really looking forward to having you all here. We'll give it about 20 more seconds or so. Very excited as we have a lot of information. That will be an interactive slide presentation throughout the presentation. We'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to our session today, the 6 types of taproom customers, who you serve and what they want. My name is Michael Varda, and I'm the founder of Craft Beer Advisory Services. We're a full-service market research firm exclusively dedicated to serving the craft beer industry. I'm honored here to be speaking with you all today. Amy, welcome. Thanks for tuning in. So before we dive in, I want to set a little bit of context for exactly what we're all about, who I am, what our company does, what you'll get out of today's session. So I began my career and still work full-time in corporate market research. I've worked with major universities, big tech companies, and in my current role, lead brand perception research for Capital One. I've taken the skills and just the experiences throughout those 3 years and applied that to one of my greatest passions, that being craft beer. So this company was born in August of 2021, and we specialize in consumer motivation analysis, brand perceptions, and other market research products at both a custom level and a market level. This particular presentation will be a market level, meaning we're looking at a national sample of data, national implications, things like that. So today we'll be looking at the types of taproom consumers, demographic makeups of those personas, who competitors are for each type, a live exercise estimating your customer base, and a walkthrough of implications for brand, for taproom offerings, and ultimately your marketing. And before we get into the actual content, the last introductory slide is about background and methodology of the data that we'll be looking at today that created this entire presentation, so you can get a full understanding of exactly what we're looking at. So first, to provide some context of what we're looking at. During our research process over the first quarter of 2022, we randomly selected 68 craft breweries across the United States and collected each Yelp review posted in 2021 per brewery for a total of over 1,300 unique pieces of customer feedback, meaning over 1,300 different customer experiences at 68 breweries. Then each piece of feedback was analyzed across an 18-factor motivation matrix, ranging from beer variety to service quality, parking availability, and COVID policies. This 18-factor motivation matrix is just the list of all the factors that contributed to taproom experiences in our review selection. All the factors were consumer selected, meaning I did not come up with a list of factors on my own. If a consumer mentioned it in a review, it made the list of motivating factors. After the factor motivation tagging was done, we ran an analysis on patterns of behavior, finding similarities between visitors, and created 6 distinct consumer personas that you see on the bottom left of your screen right now. We have social gatherers, foodies, beer geeks, travelers, locals, and family trippers. Each review had the potential to belong to more than one persona group. For example, A foodie was also able to be categorized as a beer geek depending on the content of their review. If they were talking about how perfectly cooked their burger was, or the seasoning on their fries, as well as the Citra and Mosaic hops in their IPA, that person was categorized as both a foodie and a beer geek. Our overall consumer profile represented 47 states, which was roughly 45% male and 55% female. The map on the right represents where the feedback came from across the United States. Now that we're done with the background stuff, we'll get into these consumer persona breakdowns. So we're going to take a deep dive on all 6 of these persona categories, looking at the gender makeup of each, looking at the likelihood that they have positive experiences, as well as motivating factors for their positive experiences and experience detractors. In other words, the negative aspects from their visits. And first up, we have the largest persona group, social gatherers. They made up approximately 50% of the overall sample of online reviews. Social gatherers are primarily motivated by the environmental elements of your taproom. We're talking about your outdoor patio, the picnic tables, the ambiance. They're here to hang out with their friends, probably chat it up with the bartender, and have a great time in general. Their perceptions are impacted by service and staff more than most of the other persona groups. I'm going to take a moment to quickly orient you to the slide because each consumer persona follows the exact same format. On the middle left here, we have the social gatherers gender breakdown. And the gold represents the consumer persona and the gray represents the overall benchmark of the other groups combined. So you can read this as the social gatherers were a little bit more female than male. On the bottom left, we have overall sentiment of social gatherers in gold compared to the sentiment of all groups combined in gray. So we do find that social gatherers are more likely to have a positive overall experiences than the combination of all other groups combined. On the top right, this is a look at the factors motivating return visits compared to the factors contributing to the negative experiences. We see that environment/location ranks as the top factor for social gatherers, and then things like beer variety and food ranking second and third for positive visit returns. Shifting to the negative side, we see service interactions are the number one reason social gatherers have a negative experience. This could be categorized as slow service, a rude interaction, things of that nature. And in the middle here, we have these arrows showing the change in positive return visit motivators and how it correlates to negative experience detractors. So taking a spotlight on service here, service was the number 5 motivating factor for a return visit, but it actually shot up to the number 1 reason why social gatherers don't return to tap rooms. Finally, on the bottom right, we'll see competitors for this particular persona, a sample review for someone who fits that category, and a key takeaway. This is designed to show you who these other folks are potentially going and visiting instead of your tap room, the sample review so you understand what type of review, what type of person fit into this category, and lastly, a key takeaway that we'll talk about later in the presentation as well when we think about implications for brand, for taproom offerings, and for marketing. So competition for social gatherers is typically in those places that you go to socialize and chat, hang with friends, less so a family restaurant than the traditional bar atmosphere, other breweries and wineries. Social gatherers are driven by the vibes of a taproom. They are also the most common visitor and generally a more positive consumer when compared to the other groups. The rest, again, of the social group slides will follow this exact same structure as we learn about what makes these other groups tick. Next up, we have foodies, as they compose the second largest persona group among craft brewery taproom consumers. Now for the surprise of the presentation, foodies are most motivated by food, of course. But when we break this down a bit further, consumers showed a higher likelihood of returning to a taproom depending on the type of kitchen. From most likely to least likely to return, Full kitchens rank highest, followed by a limited kitchen, food trucks, and then delivery services being allowed on premise. This group is about evenly split, both male and female, and show little deviation in the benchmark in terms of overall sentiment. Shifting to the top right of the screen, after food, beer variety and environment are the next factors by positive experience motivators. When foodies have negative experiences, they also correlate most to food. Service and price round out the top 3 topics in terms of negative experiences. So when you're thinking about who your competition is, foodies arguably have the most alternatives to pick from. And unfortunately, this is the second largest group, 1 out of 3 reviews from our sample fitting this category. They can go to pubs, bars, restaurants, food halls, and other options where alcoholic beverages are served. And since beer isn't the number one factor motivating their visit, they're likely going to be checking the food menu before going to your brewery. You'll see our sample review illustrating that food was the top motivator and beer seeming like an afterthought, albeit still important. Seeing that food offerings are both the number one motivator and number one detractor, breweries need to offer some sort of food truck, local restaurant partnership, or allow deliveries to avoid isolating the second largest consumer persona. The next consumer persona, which I was actually surprised to see ranking at number 3, was the beer geeks. These folks are the ones that are asking about which hops are in the IPA, which type of barrel was the stout aged in, true lovers of the craft. Their expectations are typically very high of craft beer. Beer geeks, when compared to the overall gender benchmark, were evenly split between men and women. And perhaps surprisingly, beer geeks were more likely to have positive reviews than other persona groups. I personally would have thought that these folks really into the craft of it all might have been tougher to please, but the data suggests otherwise. This is the only persona group in which a specific beer ranked in the top 3 motivators impacting positive visits that we see right here. There was no other persona group where specific beer ranked in the top 3. We see specific beers did not detract from any experiences on the far right side, meaning that even the most difficult customers or the most nuanced beer geeks could find something that they truly enjoyed. This is also a group where you naturally have the least competition. A lot of times restaurants won't have the selection or the specific beer these folks are searching for, so they'll return to the brewery to continue to try new things or get that special release. You'll again find our sample review of what constituted a beer geek. The focus here is on their nuanced taste between 2 beers. And if someone said the beer was good or I had a great flight, that did not count as a beer geek. So these folks are actually your lowest maintenance crowd because they are more positive than other personas, typically finding something on the beer list to enjoy. And you naturally face the least competition in terms of venues outside of breweries or specialty craft beer bars. Coming in at the 4th largest consumer group from our national sample, travelers. I want to quickly call out that depending on your location, the percentage of travelers could be significantly more or significantly less. This percentage is representative of our national sample. These folks are interested in it all, seeking experiences, meaning tours, brewery views, good eats, and good beer, because it's usually a vacation after all for these guys. Travelers leaving reviews were more likely to be women than men, and they were also our most positive consumer persona group overall. Rather than diving deep onto the return visit motivators, I want to focus on the far right side of the screen, dialing in on the experienced detractors for this group. Service and staff are the number 1 and 2 detractors for this group, really showing that human interaction is everything. And there's an added level of pressure when these people are traveling. They're usually taking their PTO, using their valuable resources, putting money into these experiences. And at a minimum, they want to have positive people interactions. The good news is that all the people interactions that you have are truly something that's in the brewery's control, even more so than things like price or environment or other circumstantial factors. The competition for these people is also more limited than other groups. We found in our reviews that other tourist-based spots, such as local restaurants with a reputation for a specific food, or other sort of experience-based restaurants, whether that's incredible views or specialty items, are the top contenders for this group. In the end, we should love our out-of-towners because they're more positive than other groups, and negative experiences are typically due to people interactions, all things that you can train around. I'm going to take a moment to take a sip of water. Feel like I'm talking at 100 miles an hour. As always, feel free to add in questions in the chat. We will have opportunities for Q&A at the end of the session. And yeah, we will cover anything asked in the comments towards the end. As we keep chugging along, we have 2 more personas to get through. And next on the docket are locals. You'll notice the X percentage in the top right corner. In our sample, about 10% of the reviews analyzed were from locals, but we did not want to assign a percentage in this case because many locals won't often be the ones leaving reviews. They'll just come. As you're all aware, small businesses need the locals, but locals are, however, the trickiest to manage in terms of leaving reviews and developing that online reputation. Locals are much more likely to leave negative reviews than any other persona group, and typically they only happen after one bad experience. They may have 10 good experiences, but the 11th one that doesn't meet expectations may prompt them to be a first-time reviewer. Most of the complaints typically surround service. Particularly with COVID-19 impacting our research, locals were comparing the pre-pandemic experiences to the during and post-pandemic experiences. These folks want nothing more than to return to their favorite spot, but are doing so with the highest expectations. Food, beer variety, and environment rank as the top 3 motivators, most closely mimicking the social gatherers group. Service, food, and staff round out the top 3 experience detractors. The main competition for locals is going to be the traditional bars and restaurants. With location obviously playing a factor, you're likely most familiar with these competitors than any other persona group's competitor set. With locals likely comprising a significant percentage of your overall consumer base, it's important to encourage them to leave reviews, build that positive online reputation, and protect against what will be the inevitable experience from time to time of a bad day. Again, really dialing down just the fact that these are likely the people that are maybe supporting your business the most, but not as often leaving the positive reviews. Making sure that you're building that online reputation, because when people are looking for new spots, they're checking Google, they're checking Yelp, they're checking Facebook or Instagram, whatever it may be, to get an idea. And locals can be your most valuable asset as you think about building that reputation, but often it's an underutilized space and there's more negativity than we would like to see. So last up, we have family trippers, another group that is more difficult to please. Luckily, this is a smaller percentage of brewery consumers, but they are also just as likely to be as negative as locals. As we look into why this is, it naturally makes sense. There are more people to please. Partners need to be happy, kids need to be happy, and don't forget about their 4-legged friends either. We'll focus our time on this slide on the experienced detractors again. After interactions with people, service, and staff, come price. One that I'm sure many of us can understand when we're thinking about larger group outings and specifically in times with such inflation. We also saw things about not being child-friendly or pet-friendly surfacing as experienced detractors. Not being child-friendly ranged from explicit policies not allowing children in the venue to things like there weren't changing tables in the restrooms or high chairs for infants. Competition for these consumers is widespread, from local restaurants to family activity hubs like bowling, where kids can play and be entertained, and parents can also have specialty drinks. The key takeaway here is that these folks are more difficult to please because parents are doing one thing while kids care about many other things. In order for the parents to be satisfied, the kids need to come first in most cases. So that was a lot of me talking, and we're almost to the live exercise portion of the presentation. Going to pause here on this slide, which just gathers the information from the first portion of this presentation, I'm not going to read through these one by one, but rather make a few observations at trends overall across these groups. And as we look, food and beer variety are top 3 motivators across all persona groups. Environment is a top 3 motivator in all but one group. Specific beers matter most to beer geeks, travelers, and locals, and staff and service are also mentioned frequently. In terms of detractors, service is either number 1 or number 2 for all groups. We also see price making an appearance for all groups and negative reviews. Price does matter, however, more to families, travelers, and foodies. I'm going to pause here for a moment just for you all to check this out. Feel free to comment in something that you found interesting, perhaps surprising. I'll just take about 30 seconds here just to see if we get any feedback on potential things that were interesting or surprising. Please don't be shy. All right, that's okay. We will keep moving along. And in case there are comments that I'm not seeing right now, we will get back to those later. So now, just in the interest of time, yes, no mention of beer quality, really hard to quantify. Absolutely, particularly in these reviews. We're scraping things off of the internet, and where we get into beer quality was really in that beer geek category. You definitely hear people comparing their experiences to other breweries. Kristin, Foodies are our most critical group. Yeah, absolutely. Very, very important. Awesome. So we're going to move to the second portion of our time together today, the live exercise. The purpose of this live exercise is for you to get an estimate and a framework of who your audience is so you can think about top competitors, what matters most, and what to do to ensure positive experiences with each consumer persona. I want to emphasize that this is meant to be an estimate. It is in no way going to be perfectly representative of your consumer base. Think of this more of a conversation starter or thought provoker. So the way that this is going to work, I've put together a BuzzFeed-esque type of quiz for everyone here to take. So if everyone can navigate to this link, I know Andrew is in the back. He's going to pop in that link on whichever channel you're watching this on. You're going to be able to take this quiz. It's short. It's 9 questions. And if you're unable to take this quiz, don't worry. It's not necessary to complete the presentation. We'll be going over the results for each group together anyways, and the link will be accessible forever so you can take it at your leisure. I'm going to pause now for about 3-4 minutes so you can take that quiz, read your result, and then we will come back and talk about some implications. Dana, during the pause here while we have some people taking this quiz, that's a great point. Curious of how distinguishing between social gatherers and locals. So the way that we distinguish between those in terms of data, it was not necessarily done on location alone. It was also the content of the review. So if somebody said, we've gone here 10 times, it's our tried and true, and they don't mention anything about their location, that was also tagged as a local. Again, if somebody has said like, oh, it's the best spot in town, or they said things that just suggested that they were belonging to a particular smaller location, that was how we tagged those local reviews. And just also mentioning that reviews were able to be tagged in more than one category, because it would have been unfair to reviews that fit multiple and just throwing that in one. And the question, will this presentation be available for download? It absolutely will be available forever on YouTube and on Craft Beer Professionals. And you can reach out to myself or my company's website. We can get you the slides available for download as well. All righty, so we will continue moving along here with the quiz. starting to look at implications. And one more reminder, just to keep in mind that these descriptions won't be perfect. I engineered the quiz to have 3 possible results and recognizes that minimalizes breweries significantly. There are way many more types of breweries than just 3 types. But for the purposes of this presentation today and time's sake, we decided on these 3 possible results to walk through together. It's possible for some breweries, may even to be a combination of the 3 possible results. But without any further research caveats, we will get right to it. So this first result, your brewery is a local/regional hangout. People are coming typically to hang, to drink, and be happy. This brewery attracts lots of social gatherers, locals, and families if they're permitted. The beer geeks may not come in regularly, but it's a growing customer persona as the reputation and your brand grows. Travelers and foodies may not perceive you as a first choice, but if they come in, the bartenders are going to keep them very happy. So shifting to the top right of the screen here, these types of joints are most likely to attract the social gatherers, the locals, and the family trippers. The other persona groups may be searching for other options, but they wouldn't necessarily be disappointed if they gave you a shot. So thinking about what this means in terms of brand offerings and marketing as we shift to the bottom of the screen. This is meant to spark thought depending on what stage your brewery is at. So first, for brand, are you thinking about another location, maybe in a new geography, or even on the other side of town? What are the goals ensuring your brand is uniform in advertisements, social media, artwork, imagery, really homing in on exactly what that can be, who your competition is. So thinking about social gatherers, locals, and family trippers, that's going to be the pubs, that's going to be the bars, that's going to be the restaurants and things like that, where they can get those sort of social experiences and the food as well. So in terms of offerings, environment upgrades and food offerings are likely going to be the most mission critical to help keep those largest consumer bases happiest. Ensuring that you have entertainment on days when families are more likely is another key opportunity to please one of those more difficult persona groups. Lastly, for marketing, you want to make sure that your audience feels the socialization they'll get at the brewery through your messaging. Images of customers laughing at the bar, enjoying a drink with a band in the background, truly trying to make an emotional appeal to those social needs. In the same vein as brand expansion, thinking about geo-targeted ads, whether it's Google or Instagram, can be really effective for these folks that are particularly interested in socialization. People that are interested in socialization have interest in music and sports and comedy, a wide variety of things. And it makes a very good combination for an ad when you start selecting which of those things are you going to target interest-wise. So with that result, we're going to move to the second possible result. And number 2 is a full service attraction. This brewery is extremely well known across a region. It specifically attracts social gatherers, foodies, locals, and families. Everyone has something to look forward to, whether it's the beer, the food, or the entertainment. It may not be a beer geek's first choice, and travelers may be looking for something a bit more specific, a specific draw to something, but everyone can have a good time. This brewery is one typically offering a variety of foods, has a larger tap room, regular entertainment, regular events, those kinds of things. In terms of brand, breweries at this stage should begin thinking about road mapping the ideal experience for those different target personas. Hone in on a key value proposition for those consumers, play to those strengths, become known for something for each one of those persona groups. In terms of taproom offerings, you're already doing extremely well. So based on the considerations of those taproom experiences, what are the upgrades that can enhance that experience? Is it an expanded patio, a heated tent? Maybe it's arcade games to cater to the families if you have more families visiting your taproom. And then shifting to the marketing, you already have an established brand, so focusing on offerings is likely going to be the most effective tool to bring those customers in. Knowing several of the core personas are concerned about prices, regular posts about meal deals, happy hours, and other promotions can be an effective outlet to to convert more of those customers. We have one more result to finish through for our time today. And result number 3 coming out of the quiz is a destination brewery. Craft beer consumers know you and they're willing to travel and come and see you. But since they've traveled so far, expectations are typically high. While you may not have a tremendous amount of locals in the tap room, they're likely still buying your beer off the shelves in the grocery stores and distributors, depending on your state. These breweries often offer full kitchens, expansive taproom spaces, a long list of beers, full merchandise options, and host regular events. When thinking about your brewery at this state, the shift of brand goes from establishment to maintenance, keeping an eye on what people are saying, what they like, what they wish they had more of. Most breweries at this stage are already doing this, but making sure all your social media accounts are updated, using the same tone, and message similar things on these different channels. In terms of offerings, it's important to try and stay ahead of that competition because you have a lot at this stage, but no need to change what isn't broken. One key point that I'd like to add on here, this is applicable really to all results, but when you're a destination brewery, you have a large facility, it's even more relevant. It seems elementary to offer tours, but tours were actually the #1 form of brewery entertainment mentioned across all persona groups. People love seeing and learning about the brewery, and even better if you can offer tasters or a commemorative mug of some sort. Marketing is left to the folks in that department at this stage, but should focus primarily on the beer releases, food offerings, and events to cater to the positive motivators of these selected groups up here. Doing some legwork on possible expansion areas can also help guide where your paid media should go, unlocking new geographies or attempting to build a stronger presence for a second or even third location. So that brings us to the end of content today. And before we get into the actual Q&A, I want to take some time to thank all those who made this possible. First, to craft beer professionals for selecting us to present. Thank you so much, Andrew. We were very excited about this opportunity. And then the sponsors for the event, including Arrive POS, River Drive Cooperage, and White Labs. A special thanks go out to our partners at Craft Beer Advisory Services, including Social Context Labs, our advisory board, and additional contributors to the research presentation, specifically Allison V. And now with the time remaining, I want to open it. We'll be doing some Q&A with our listeners, and I will pause here for the remaining time. If there are no other questions, we will see you next time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. But I will pause here with our remaining 6 minutes or so before the next session if we have any other comments. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining, for listening. Maxine, hi, welcome. How would you suggest adapting this presentation into a training to increase customer service for staff? That's a wonderful question. And the thing about data is the data doesn't lie. Data is the data and data is the facts. And so what I would suggest is if there was one slide that is extremely pertinent, I'll actually go back to it on the presentation here. This one right here, where we look at all of these factors and look at detractors for each group. And we see service being top 2 in all of these groups. That's really important. And as you communicate that, what's the reason that people aren't going to come back? That's going to be because of their interactions. So they realize that it doesn't matter if they're interested in food. It doesn't matter if they're interested in beer. They want that good people interaction. Showing your staff that it's impacting everyone almost equally, I think is a really effective way of just really diving and driving that driving that point home where, yeah, of course we need to be nice to customers, but this is something where you have data on your side, you can really communicate that. Shifting to the next question, Amy, What's the most delicate way to ask for reviews? I've seen this in a couple of ways. Something as simple as a chalkboard on the way out that they see, like, leave us a review on Yelp, find us on Google, tell us about your experience, things like that. In the presentation yesterday with Julie, I heard her saying, I wish that more breweries did surveys. I echo that sentiment times 1,000. More breweries need to be doing customer experience surveys, because getting that sort of one-off feedback from the bar, like, oh, I wish you had more sours, or I wish you had chili, it's fine, it's useful, but when you get it in a one-off way, it's not going to be something that's trackable and that's really usable. So finding the way to get that feedback, organize it, and then going on from there is going to be really critical. So just encouraging that, whether it's a chalkboard, it could be something as much of a sticker if you use QR codes on your tables of, leave us a review, 10% off your next bill, whatever it might be, a free pour, something like that. Just to incentivize that, especially in the local population. Dana, will you be repeating this analysis annually to evaluate the findings? Yes, absolutely. So the data from this presentation is actually the same data set that we released in our first annual presentation of craft beer consumer motivations, where we look at things a level deeper. So looking at, what about environments are people liking? What about staff interactions are people enjoying? What are the food types? What are the drink types? So we have that presentation that's also available free. And this is the same data set coming from that presentation that we used for this presentation, but organized everything into the consumer personas. All of that is accessible. Andrew is on it there. The consumer motivation report. You can click that link, and then you will hear from either me or a staff representative getting you a copy of that report, just so you can check that out in greater detail. Everything is accessible at www.craftbeeradvisoryservices.com. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and my email is michael@craftbeeradvisoryservices.com. Very easy to remember. Thank you all so much for joining. I will pause, see if we have any other last minute questions come in. If not, thank you all so much for joining. Very, very excited. I hope that you found this useful, and please enjoy the remainder of the conference. Andrew, thank you so much.